There we go. Okay. Oops. This thing can be annoying and not work very well. Hello, whoever just popped in. I see you up there. Dude, how are you, brother? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head? Are you still on the zoomies? Shroomy zoomy zoomies? Or is that now some... Sorry, I'm getting setting up Hey Ray! How's it going? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head? Okay, that looks screwy. Screwy patooey. Alright, that's not what I wanted. Never mind. There's what I wanted. Okay, cool. Ba-bam. So, how is everybody tonight? I am having a wonderful day. It's been a pretty good birthday. I went to the dispo, and sadly, the dispo I go to does not like give you any celebration or discount for your birthday. They just give you a happy birthday, all that. But that's okay. It's still the cheapest prices in State College. And I picked up some. Bam! Here it is. Dude, thank you, brother. I picked up PB. Okay, PB, like peanut butter. P. Solventless infused ground flour. Thanks, Ray. I appreciate that. And it has 42% THCA. And it's pretty good. The weed itself is PBP. So it's PB and then a space and a P. Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your heads, everybody that's new here? I see there's 5 numbers up there. So if you're new, please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would greatly appreciate the subscription. You don't have to watch the videos. I mean, come on. You may not like the sound of my voice. But if you do, and you like to have somebody read to you. Kyler, how's it going? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head? But if you like the sound of my voice and, you like audiobooks, because basically what it is. Yahweh, how's it going? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head? Please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. I read obscure books there. Kobo, March Madness winner. How's it going? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head? I actually do not get into the March Madness. Kinga3, happy birthday. Just subscribed. Thank you, man. Love and appreciate you. Thanks for coming in. How's your head? Kyler, love the emojis there. But, yeah, if you like to hear the sound of my voice and you like audiobooks, I try to keep the videos down to between 30 minutes. I try to make them no more than 45 because after that, it's just droning on. And that's pretty much the extent of my ability to read without going hoarse. But, Kinga, I'm in Lexington. Oh, Kentucky. Okay, March Madness. Nice. I'm in Pennsylvania. And the team that I would root for rarely goes to the March Madness, and that would be the Penn State Nittany Lions. Although the women's team is much better. They usually end up going to championships every year. But that being neither here nor there, this is the book we're reading from tonight, Callahan's Crosstime Saloon. Who has the emojis? I don't. Kyler, whatever the little blue whales or whatever that is, that's the emojis I'm speaking of. I don't know what they are. They're little, I guess they're little smiley faces or whatever they are. But it looks like little blue whales emojis. I may be using the wrong vernacular for it. But that would be me. All right, Kinga, thanks for stopping in, though, man. I greatly appreciate you. I'll be reading. You can always watch this video. I posted then once, and you can see it tomorrow or whenever you want to watch it again. But thanks for stopping in, man. I greatly appreciate it. And you have a good night, brother. All right, here we are. What time is it? It is 10:05. So, not quite yet. Not quite ready to read yet. Subbed to you. Oh, thanks, Kyler. I greatly appreciate that. Like I said, you don't even have to listen to my videos. I just greatly appreciate the sub. I generally post 1 to 2 videos a week. Depends on how I'm feeling on reading, and if I can catch up with all my reading that I like to do. But all right, we got 5 more minutes here. Let me check some messages. I got a few I want to check here. Bum 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 bum. Okay. All right, just wanted to check some messages there. All right. Let me see. Oh, here's the current little blue book that I'm reading. This has 7 chapters, and I've put up chapters 1 through 4 on the channel there. And I heard a chime. Where did that come from? Let's see. No, that's not what I wanted. My messenger thing looks the same on each one. I'm so glad my friend Tatiana went in for surgery today, and she has made it home and is doing well. Last Druid, hey, how's it going, Eli? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head, brother? I was wondering when you were gonna pop in. We got 3 more minutes, and then I'll start the reading. But anyhow, as I was saying, I've got 3 more chapters left in this little blue book, and see, here's my dilemma. I usually do 2 chapters per video, which usually runs about perfect. But this one will have a 3rd chapter. It has a spare. Yes, Kyler, I will. Once I'm off here, I will return the subscription. Absolutely, buddy. Not a problem. I appreciate that. I subscribe and I return subscription. But the next one here, it's going to really take the video up. Well, maybe not. Okay. I just looked. Kyler Ox 4GG. Let me write that down, buddy, so I don't forget it, because I will. That one needs a point taken off of it. Doink, the cap. There it is. Okay. Oh, that sound was a notification on either my phone or my tablet here. I gotta turn that off. All right. Oops. Okay. YLER. Ox 4. There's probably a way I can save that in there, but I'm old and I don't know how. Ox 4 QG. Make it look like a G. There we go. And I will subscribe once I get off here, bud. Absolutely. Let me do this and turn off, make sure I have my notifications silent on here. That was not silent. So that's probably what that was. And I believe my tablet is always on silent. Yes. All right, so time is it? 10:09. Bye, Kyler. You leaving me, buddy, already? All right, well, You have yourself a good night, caller. I appreciate you. Those of you that are new, please go subscribe to my YouTube channel and come back. There's at least 1 minute before I start reading. I will start reading at 10:10. 10:10 wins. That's a tick. Just a tick from my brain. There was, when I was a child, there was a chance you might go to sleep. All right, Tyler. Well, that's fine, buddy. I mean, I don't mind that. I have had people say that they, in fact, one friend used to use my videos to put their children to sleep. I would be the bedtime story. And sure enough, the kids would go to sleep. So, I don't mind that. So, anyhow, there was I keep looking up there for the time and it's not there. 10:10. All right, guys, here we go. I'll give a brief story on the 10:10. 10:10 Wins was a radio station in New York City, and that was the commercial. It was 10:10 Wins, and it had a digital clock on it, one of the old, flip digitals. And I guess that wouldn't be digital, that'd be analog. Anyhow, it had one of those clocks, and it would flip to 10:10, and then it would do 10:10 Wins. And it's something that sticks in my head every time I see 10:10. How long are you live for right now? I'll be live for about an hour. I'll read till right around 11 o'clock. And then you can always, this will be posted onto my channel, so you can always go on and watch it later. So if you miss anything. Okay, so here we go, guys. Callahan's Crosstime Saloon. And let's... You remember 10:10 Wins, dude? Oh, that's awesome. That's close to midnight for you, Kyler? All right. Well, like I said, buddy, you hang in as long as you like, or as long as you can. I appreciate you stopping by and being here, that's for sure. All right. Here we go. Got a little token. Now we'll get a little hydration. Clear the throat. All right, guys, here we go. I'll backtrack here a little bit. I'll do a paragraph before where we left off. You be right back, Kyler? Okay. Pardon me. All right, here we go. I calculate that by now I must have heard at least 100 people ask for help of one kind or another in Callahan's. It's that kind of a place. I only remember one getting turned down, and he was a special case. We indicated our willingness to help any way we could, and Fast Eddie fetched a chair and a fresh drink. She had enough composure back to thank him gently, and then she began talking. During her entire narrative, her voice remained flat, impersonal, as though she were giving a history lesson. Her first words explained why. And that's where we left off last night. Nice. I'm glad you're going strong, buddy. It's a long story, she said wearily. At least, it has been for me. An uncommonly long story. It begins on the day of my birth, which is October 25th, 1741. Huh? Said Doc and Long Drink and I, loudest of all, Fast Eddie. You mean 1941, Eddie corrected. Who's telling this story? I mean 1741. And if you boys aren't prepared to believe that, maybe I should stop right now. We thought about it. Compared to some of the things I've heard and believed in Callahan's, this was hard to turn the page. This was nothing. Come to think, it explained a few things. Those eyes of hers, for instance. Sorry, Rachel, Callahan said for all of us. So you're 232 years old. Go on. Eddie looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Sure thing, he said bravely. Sorry I interrupted. And in the 6 or 7 hours that ensued, Rachel told us the most incredible tale I have ever heard, before or since. I couldn't repeat that tale if I tried. That uncharacteristically impersonal voice seemed to go on forever with its catalogue of sorrows, outlined for us the happiness and heartbreaks of more than 200 years of active womanhood. You could probably drag it out of me word for word with deep hypnosis, for I never stopped listening, but the sheer length and weight of the narrative seemed to numb my forebrain for intermediate periods of time. The aggregate memory is largely gone. But different bits and pieces stuck in the minds of each of us, and I compared notes later. Me, for instance. I recall how, when she was describing what it was like to be crammed in a root cellar while a roaring fire overhead ate her first husband and her first 6 children. She kept saying over and over again how cramped it was and how frustrating not to be able to straighten up. It struck me that even after all the intervening years, her mind continued to dwell on merely physical hurts. Tom Hoffman now, he remembered in detail the business of her second husband, the minister, going mad and killing her next 5 kids and himself because anyone who refused to age like God intended must be sent by Satan. Tom said what struck him was how little progress churches had made in 200 years toward convincing people that the unknown is not by definition evil. Long Drink is a war games nut. He retained the part about the Battle of Lake Champlain in 1814, which claimed her third husband and 2 more children. Fast Eddie remembered the story of her first days as a whaler's whore in Nantucket, because he stopped in the middle and asked her solicitously if she was shocking him. Not me, he said defiantly. I bet you was a terrific whore. And she smiled and thanked him and continued, clinically, dispassionately. Spud Montgomery recalls the 3 children that resulted from Rachel's whoring years, because Spud's from Alabama and never stopped fighting the Civil War, and that's what they died in. Tommy Jansen remembers her last child, the imbecile, who never did learn to feed himself and took 35 long years to die, because Tommy grew up with a retarded sister. Doc Webster's strongest memory is the final birthing, her first in a hospital, the stillborn, after which the OB performed the hysterectomy. Doc identified strongly with the astonishment of a doctor faced with a patient in her late 20s whose uterus had delivered 18 kids. Callahan characteristically recalls the man she was married to at the time, the first man since her psychotic minister to whom she felt she could tell the truth, with whom she did not have to cosmetically age herself, with whom she could share her lonely, terrible secret. The gentle and strangely understanding man who cured her of her self-loathing and self-fear and accepted her for what she inexplicably was. The good and loving man who had been killed, mugged, for the $1.50 in his pocket, a month or 2 before Rachel found Callahan's place. But not one of us retains anything like the complete text of Rachel's story. We wouldn't want to if we could, for condensing it into a comprehensibility. Boy, that was a bigger word than what my brain anticipated. Comprehensibility would turn it into a soap opera. And we couldn't if we tried, if somebody gave me a guaranteed accurate rundown of my own future in that kind of depth. I don't think I'd remember much more. There was one king hell mountain of a tale. And it displaced its own weight in alcohol as the hours of its telling dragged by. Me, I'm 35 years old. Not really. That was me speaking. And I have been there since my birthday. I've turned 59 today. And back again. And when Rachel finished her virtually uninterrupted narration, I felt like a 5-year-old whose great grandmother had just recited the story of her life in horrific detail. In the dead silence that grew from Rachel's last words, there just didn't seem to be anything to say to her. No words in all my experience that wouldn't sound banal. Like telling a leper that it's always darkest before the dawn. Not that there had been agony in her voice at any time during her recital, nor any on her face when she finished. That was the most ghastly thing about her tale. It was delivered with the impersonal detachment of a historian, recited like the biography of one long dead. You are there at the Battle of Lake Champlain. Oh, there was pain aplenty in her story, sure, but so buried under 2 centuries of scars that it could only be inferred, and yet the pain had been there earlier, had broken through to the surface for a moment at least, when Rachel had cried. How? Why? I became peripherally aware of the men of Callahan's place, arrayed around me with their mouths open. Even Callahan looked poleaxed, and that almost scared me. I glanced around, looking for even one face that held some kind of answer, some kind of consolation, some word for Rachel, and found one. Fast Eddie's mouth was trembling, but there were words in it struggling to get out. He couldn't seem to bring himself to speak, but he looked like he sure in hell wanted to. Callahan saw it too. You look like you got something to say, Eddie, he said gently. Eddie seemed to reach a decision all at once. Whirling to face Callahan, he jammed his hands in his hip pockets and snarled. Snarled? Who asked you? I got nothing to say. Callahan started. And if I had any capacity for shock left, I'd have been shocked. Eddie barked at Callahan? It was like watching Lassie sink her fangs into Tommy's leg. Eddie, Doc Webster began reasonably, if you have any word that might help Rachel here, I think you ought to... Shut up, Eddie blared. I tell you, I got nothing. You say, see? And silence returned and stayed a while. We could only surmise that Rachel's tale of sorrow had unhinged the banty little piano player. Creeping Jesus, it had near unhinged me. And I wasn't in love with her. The central issue, then, was still Rachel. Well, if Eddie had nothing to say, who did? Who else? So all you have left is immortality? Huh, Rachel? Callahan rumbled. Tough break. That did seem to put a little perspective on it. Surely Rachel's run of bad luck was due to change soon. It was only logical. Sure, Rachel, I said, beginning to cheer up. You're bound to start getting the breaks any time now. But it was no good. There was a smile on her face, but not a happy one. It figures, Long Drink said hurriedly. You can have a run of bad cards that seems to last forever, but sooner or later you pick up your hand and you find 4 aces. It's just the law of averages, Rachel. Things always even out in the end. Sorry, boys, Rachel said, still smiling sadly. Nice try. I understand what you're saying. But there are a couple of holes in the logic. 2 incorrect assumptions. One of them your mistake, and one of them mine. What mistakes? Callahan asked, his rugged face wrinkled in thought. Your mistake first, Mike. It's a natural one. I suppose. But it's a mistake just the same. What makes you think I'm immortal? Eh? I'm older than any four of you put together, yes. But longevity is not immortality. Mike, nothing is immortal. That's Dorian Gray. My clock runs as slow as his did, but it runs. But you look a lot younger than 232 years old, she finished. Right. I look like I'm maybe crowning 30. But Mike, what's my natural lifespan? He started to answer, then shut up, looking thoughtful. Who the hell knew? Someday I will die, Rachel went on. Just like you, like Tommy Flannery, like all humans, like all living things. I know that. I feel it in my bones. And there isn't a geriatric expert in the world who can say when. There are no data to work with. As far as I know, I am unique. I reckon you're right, Callahan conceded. But so what? Anyone in this room can die tomorrow. We're all under sentence of death, like you said. But to stay sane, a body just has to lie or has to live as though they'll go on forever. Assume there's a lot of years left. Hellfire. Tom Flannery lived that way, and he knew better. Maybe there ain't no way to figure the odds for you, but if I was an insurance salesman, I'd love to have your business. Jake and Long Drink are right. There's good times around the corner, always, and I bet you live to see 'em. I may not be as old as you, Rachel, but there's one thing I've learned in the time I've been around. Joy always equals pain in the long run. Ain't that true? She shook her head impatiently and sighed. The second mistake, Mike. The one that's my fault, in a way. You see, the most spectacular points of the story I've told you all tonight are the bad ones. And so, it must seem like I've just always been a hard luck kid. But that's not so at all. I've known happiness too. In full measure, with Jacob and Isaiah, and even with Benjamin, and most of all, with my second and most beloved Jacob. There were good times in Nantucket, if it comes to that, and throughout the whoring years the profession is vastly underrated, and my joys have been greater, I think, than any of you could know. Because you are correct, Mike. Joy is the product of pain that has gone before it, and vice versa. I know I could never have appreciated Jacob's quiet acceptance as much if I hadn't been looking for it for 2 centuries. Oh, the seesaw never stops. I learned that when Jacob was killed. But then again, I was gladder to find this bar than any customer you've ever had. Then what? I mean, why am I hurting? Hear me, Mike. There's nothing like extended life to make you aware that you're going to die someday. I am more aware of my own mortality than any of you could possibly be. Damn it, I've been dying for 200 years. And how do normal people come to terms with that awareness of mortality? How do you beat death? Oh, Lord, the doc gasped. I remember now. That toast. Yes, Rachel nodded. The one that gave me the weeps for the first time in 20 years. To motherhood. I don't want to see or hear or say anything about motherhood ever again. A man or a woman who's afraid of dying will either decide to live, to believe in an afterlife, or have children, so that something of himself or herself will live on. I haven't believed in God since my years with Benjamin, and all my babies died childless, and I can't have any more. I have 19 chances at real immortality, and they all came up craps. I'm the last of my line. So what will I leave behind me? I haven't the gift. Oops. I haven't the gift to leave great books or paintings or music. I can't build anything. I have no eternal thoughts to leave the world. I've been alive longer than anyone on earth. And when I'm gone, I'll leave nothing. Nothing more durable than your memories of me. Her voice had begun to rise shrilly. Her hands danced in her lap. For a while, I had hope. For those of my children who shared my birthmark, an hourglass on its side, high on the left shoulder blade, seemed to have a genetic share in my longevity. But that damned birthmark is a curse, an unbeatable hex. Not one of the marked children had any interest at all in siring or bearing children of their own. An accident or illness cut them down. Every one. If even one of them had left a child, I could die happy. But the curse is unbroken. She slammed her fist down on the bar. When I go, I'll be gone. Solid gone without a trace. Centuries of living and no heritage more durable than a footprint in the snow. She was crying again. Her voice strident and anguished, contorted with pain. I could see Eddie, his own face twisting with a strong emotion, trying to break in, but now that he wanted to talk, she wouldn't let him in. So what have you got to offer me, boys? What's your solution? Have you got anything more useful than 4 fingers of bourbon? She got up and flung her empty glass at the fireplace, began grabbing glasses off the bar and throwing them too, grunting with effort, still speaking. What kind of answers have you got for an old lady who's trapped in a moving box sliding downhill to... She had run out of glasses, and with the last word she gripped the long-legged armchair she'd been sitting on and heaved it high over her head to throw it into the fire. And as she stood there with the heavy chair held high, her face changed. A look of enormous puzzlement soothing over the hysterical rage. Death, she finished softly, and crumpled like a rag doll, the chair bouncing and clattering into a corner. The dock was first, and then 10 feet closer, but Fast Eddie beat him easily. He slid the last yard on his knees, lifted Rachel's head with great tenderness onto his lap, and hollered, "Rachel, listen to me!" The doc tried to take her away from him, and Eddie backhanded him off his feet without looking up. "Listen to me, Rachel. Listen, goddammit," he thumped. Her eyes fluttered open. "Yes, Eddie." "You can't die, Rachel, not yet. You go and die on me and I'll break both your arms. I swear to God, listen to me. If you want a daughter, I can fix it." She smiled a faint and bitter smile. "Thanks, Eddie, but adoption just isn't the same." "I ain't talking about adoption," he barked. "But I tell you, I can fix it. I'd have spoke up sooner, but you said you didn't ever want to think about kids again. Now will you listen, or are you too busy dying?" "I'm sterile too, damn it. My wife divorced me for it." Our eyes widened a little more in this revelation, and I was suddenly ashamed of how little I knew about Eddie. But I kept my ears open, and I found out how to beat it. How to leave something behind, see? Did you ever hear of cloning? She looked startled. "You can't clone people, Eddie. Not today you can't. Maybe you and I won't live to see it happen either, but I can take you into Manhattan to a place where they'll freeze a slice of your skin, a lousy couple million cells, and keep them on ice till they can." Sorry. Pardon me. "Until they can clone people. Tom Flannery's there now, frozen like a popsicle, waiting for him to invent a cure for leukemia. He told me about it." I gasped in astonishment. Saw Callahan beginning a broad smile. "So how about it, Rachel?" Eddie snapped. "You want cryonics or Do you just want to cry? Nice play of words. She stared at Eddie for a long moment, focusing about 5 feet past him. Nobody dared exhale. And then 2 centuries of fighting spirit came through, and she smiled a genuine smile of acceptance and peace. Thank you, Eddie, she breathed. Her eyes became, for one timeless instant, the eyes of a young girl, the eyes that belonged on that youthful face, and then they closed, and she began to snore softly. Rachel, who mourned for her lost children and was comforted. Doc Webster got up off the floor, checked her pulse, and slapped Eddie on the back. Always a pleasure, Herr Doctor, to assist you in the technique which bears your name, he said jovially, spitting out a tooth. Your medicine is stronger than mine. Eddie met his gaze a little awkwardly, started to pick up Rachel's sleeping form, and then paused. Give me a hand, will you, Doc? Sure thing, buddy. We'll take her over to Smithtown General for observation, but I think she'll be okay. Together, they lifted her gently and headed for the door. But Eddie stopped when they reached it and turned toward Callahan, staring at the floor. Mike, he began, what I mean... The apology just wouldn't come. Callahan laughed aloud for the sheer joy of it and pegged the stump of a cigar into the fireplace. You guys, he said, shaking his head, always cloning around. It's still Punday night. All right, that's the end of chapter 7. And that's where we're going to pause for right now, so that I can hydrate, because I got fucking cotton mouth. And then we'll induce more cotton mouth. So. All right, here we go. I'm getting text from a friend. I don't know what he's doing up this late. But he must be on drugs. I don't know. Must be all hopped up on caffeine, probably. All right, here we go. Chapter 8. What is our time? Oh, 10:37. We got lots of time to get into this one. All right, Chapter 8. On natural causes. There's been a lot of noise in the papers lately about the series of seismic shocks that have been recorded over the last few weeks in the unlikeliest places. Quake predicting is a young art. From what I hear, and an occasional freak disturbance now and again should be no real cause for alarm. But an unprecedented mini-quake every day or 2 or 3 weeks, spotted all around the globe, culminating in a blockbuster where a quake had no right to be, is bound to cause some talk. The seismologists confess themselves baffled. Some note that none of the quakes took place in a densely populated area and are somewhat reassured. Some note the uniquely powerful, though strictly local intensity of the blasts and are perturbed. Some note the utter inability of their science to explain the quakes even after the fact, and fear that the end of the world is at hand. But me? Well, from here at the site of the first quake in the series, Suffolk County, Long Island, New York, USA, I got a much different idea. If you've been paying attention so far, you probably know what a circus Callahan's place can be on an ordinary night. Well, I'm here to tell you that on holidays, like Christmas and New Year's Eve, it becomes something to stagger the imagination. All the stops are pulled out. And difficulty turning pages commences. All the stops are pulled out. Insanity reigns supreme. And the joint generally resembles a cross between a Shriners convention and an asylum run by the Marx Brothers. So perhaps it wasn't surprising that the first quake in the series struck damn near Callahan's place on Halloween Eve. It certainly couldn't have happened the way it did on any other night. The place was more packed than ever I had ever seen it before, and I've been hanging out at Callahan's for quite a few years now. Added to the usual list of regulars and semi regulars were a host of old timers and ex regulars, some of whom I knew only by reputation, and some not at all. As I think I already told you, a lot of Callahan's customers stop needing to drink after they've been around long enough, and not many people in this crazy age enjoy judicious doses of ethanol for its own sake. So they stop showing up, or become more involved with their families, or simply move elsewhere. But holidays somehow draw them all back like chickens to the roost come sundown. So, by 9 o'clock, Callahan had already had to sweep the shattered glasses out of the fireplace to make way for incoming shipments, leaving Tom Hopman to cover the bar, and more people were coming in all the time. Nearly everyone had come in costume, lending a surreal air to a bar that's never been what you'd call mundane. There were four guys in gorilla suits playing poker in the corner, five or six sheeted ghosts doing a shuffle off to Buffalo through the press of the crowd, and 17 assorted bug-eyed monsters and little green men scattered here and there. I was profoundly glad to see that Eddie had finished his mourning and put away his grief. He had showed up in blackface and most disheveled suit I had ever seen, announcing, "I'm Scott Joplin. Look at my rags." Boy, you can tell this book was written in the 60s, 50s, 60s. Doc Webster had dressed up as hypocrites. Oh, Hippocrates. And was instantly dubbed Hippocrates. Hippocrates. Having been forced to use a tarpaulin for a toga. Long Drink McGoggle appeared in an ancient frock coat with a quill pen in the breast pocket, introducing himself as Balzac. Balls to you. Noah Gonzalez and Tommy Jansen had teamed up as a horse with a head at both ends, because neither of them wanted to be the... Nah, you get the idea. Callahan himself was dressed up as a grizzly bear, which suited his huge Irish bulk well. But he kept wincing when jostled, explaining to anyone foolish enough to listen that he was a bartender. Me, I was dressed as a pirate with a black eye patch and the name of a certain oil company printed across my chest. I was watching the tumult and enjoying myself hugely, trying to guess the identity of friends through their masks, when I spotted one very familiar face, unmasked. It was Mickey Finn. I hadn't seen Finn for quite a spell, since he moved up to the Gasp Peninsula in Canada to do some farming, and I was delighted to see that he'd made the reunion. "Finn!" I hollered over the merry roar. "This way!" Another human might not have heard me, but Finn looked up right away, smiled across the room at me, and started working his way toward the bar. There's some machine in Finn, the way he tells it, but I think there's a lot of human in him, too. He could easily have put a hand through the wall, but he was extremely careful not to discommode. Hey, Bad Witch, how are you, sweetheart? Thanks for coming in. Love and appreciate you. How's your head? All right. He was extremely careful not to discommode anyone on his way to the bar. I looked him over as he approached, noted his work shirt, sturdy overalls, and worn boots, and decided he was making a fair adjustment to his life of exile as the terrain, wrinkles on either side of his smile, said that it was no longer much an alien expression to him as it had once been. He reached me at last, shook my hand gravely, and accepted a glass of rye from Tom Hopman. He offered Tom the traditional $1 bill. "No thanks, Mr. Finn," Tom told him. "Mike says your money's no good here." "That's what I like to hear, Bad Witch." Finn smiled some more, kept the bill extended. "Thank you, sir," he said in that funny accent of his, "but I truly prefer to pay my own way." I shook my head. "If you're gonna be human, Finn, you're gonna have to learn to accept gifts," I told him. He sobered up and put away his money, nodding to himself as much as to me. "Yes, this is a hard learning, my friend. I must not refuse a gift from Mr. Callahan, who gave me the greatest gift, my free will." "Hey, Finn, don't take it so hard," I said quickly. "Accepting a gift graciously is something a lot of humans never learn. Why should you be more human than Spiro Agnew?" Spyro. I leaned back against the bar. My brain is just fucking up. I leaned back against the bar and took a sip of Bushmills. "Come on, loosen up. You're among friends." Finn looked around, his shoulders relaxing. "Some of these are unfamiliar to me," he said, gesturing toward the crowd. "Lots of them are strangers to me, too," I said. "Let's amble around and get to know some of them. But first, tell me what you've been doing with yourself. How's life in Canada?" "I'm doing well," Finn said. "And I'm also doing good, I think." "How do you mean?" "Jake, my friend," Finn said earnestly, "the gasp is one of the biggest paradoxes on this continent. Some of the richest farmland and some of the poorest farmers. In addition to making my own living, I've been trying to help them." "How do you do that?" I asked, interested. "In small ways," Finn replied. "I see further into the infrared than their eyes can see. I can evaluate soil at a glance and compute yield, evaluate their growing crops much better than they, suggest what to plan for. That taught them to listen to my opinions. And of late, I've been speaking of the necessity for alternate means of distributing their goods. It goes slowly. But one day, those frozen acres will feed many hungry people, I hope." "Why, that's just fine, Finn," I said, slapping him on the back. "I knew there was work for a man like you. Come on, let's meet some of the old-timers." Finn, being as tight with his words as some gents are with their money, nodded briefly, and we plunged into the thick of the crowd. I spotted 4 tables pushed together near the fireplace, at which were seated the Doc, Sam Thayer, and a whole bunch of apparent strangers in assorted odd costumes. Best of all, Callahan was standing nearby. It seemed like a great place to start. I steered Finn in that direction, collecting a couple of chairs on the way and signaling Callahan to join us. When he saw Finn, his face lit with pleasure, and he nodded. As we sat down, one of the unfamiliar gents, dressed as a shepherd, was just finishing a plaintive rendition of "I Know I'll Never Find Another You," and was applauded by a chorus of groans and catcalls. "Better take it on the lamb, Tony," Doc Webster suggested. "Where there's a wool, there's a way," agreed Sam, rising as if to leave. One of the boys removed his chair with a thoughtful expression, and he sat back down rather further than he had intended. Callahan lumbered up and appropriated the chair, the head of his bear costume under his arm, and Sam promptly sat on Bill Garrity's lap. This is funnier than it sounds, because Bill is a transvestite and was done up as Marilyn Monroe that particular night. While Callahan's is certainly not the only bar where Bill can indulge his peculiarity, it's the only one where he doesn't have to put up with the annoyance of being propositioned regularly. And Bill is not gay. As Sam was dressed as Mortimer Snurd, the effect was spectacular, and those around the room not otherwise occupied cheered and whistled. One of the gorillas in the corner looked up from his cards and scowled. I glanced around the table, taking inventory. A fireman, a 5'7" duck, 2 bug-eyed monsters, 1 purple and tentacled, 1 green and furry, and 1 Conan the Barbarian. "Hey, Mike," I called to Callahan. Introduce me and Finn around and we'll swap stories. Callahan nodded and opened his mouth, but the doc put a beer in front of it. I bear, beer bear, he announced, and another groan arose. Okay, I said. I'll start the ball rolling myself. Howdy, folks. I'm Jake. This here's Mickey Flynn. Various hellos came from the group, and a pretzel landed in my drink. I've heard of you, Mr. Finn, said the shepherd, grinning. They say you're hell to drink with. Obviously, the shepherd hadn't heard about this Mickey Finn, and I glanced at Finn to see how he'd take it. I needn't have worried. Apparently, he had been hanging around Callahan's place long enough. You'll make me feel sheepish, sir, he said with a straight face, if you take my name too literally. Very badly indeed, for I would feign much fun with a fine Finn fan. Callahan and I gaffed, and Doc Webster's jaw dropped. Lord God, the doc expostulated, I'm going to hang up my puns, I swear. A Hippocratic oath, said the duck, and the doc heaved a bag of beer nuts at him. Duck, duck, the doc Callahan and I crawled together, and the table broke up. Lord Jake, said the shepherd when the commotion had died down, what you said about swapping stories sounds good to me. As we introduce ourselves, let's explain what brought us here to Callahan's. I know some of you boys must have stories I'd like to hear. Nobody seems to come here without a reason. What do you say? Dressed as a Care Bear with a beer stein on his stomach. Yes, that's perfect. I wasn't, but I am now. We all looked around. Suits. Okay by me. Why not? There was no apparent reluctance. Callahan's is the place where you went to first because you needed to talk about your troubles. And the first time is always the hardest. Fine, said the shepherd. I guess I ought to start. He took a glass, filled it up, and wetted his whistle. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. I got fucking cotton mouth. Exactly, Bad Witch. That's the only thought I'll have now. He took a glass, filled it up, and wetted his whistle. He was about my age, with odd streaks of white hair on either temple that, combined with his classical shepherd's garb, made him look like a young Homer. His features were handsome, and his build excellent, but I noted with surprise that his left earlobe was missing. There was a scar on his right shoulder, nearly hidden by a deep tan, that looked like it had been put there with a crosscut saw. My name is Tommy Telesco, he said, when he had swallowed. I give lectures and slideshows and make speeches, and sometimes I go to jail. But I used to do a lot of things before I came to Callahan's. I was a transcendental meditator for a while, starting at my navel. Before that, I was a junkie. And before that, I was a drunk. And before that, I was a killer. That was right after I was a kid. See, the thing I really am is a Vietnam veteran. There were low whistles and exclamations all around. I was in my first year of college, Tony went on, when I got that magic piece of paper from my draft board. Business ad majors just weren't getting deferments. And so, I had the classic three choices: go to jail, Canada, or Vietnam. Which wasn't a lot of choices. Make no mistake, I was scared spitless of Vietnam. I watched television, but I was scared and ashamed to go to jail, and scared and incompetent to emigrate. To be brought into a strange country to fight would be tough, but to move into one myself and make a living with no skills and no degree looked impossible to me. So Nam seemed to be the lesser of three evils. I never made a moral decision about the war, never questioned whether going there was the right thing to do. It was the easiest. Oh, I knew a few guys who went to Canada, but I never really understood them. I liked America. And I knew one fella in my English class who went to jail for refusing to step forward. But his third day there, they found him on the end of his bed sheet, a few inches off the floor, his cellmate apparently asleep. And so I found myself in the Army. Basic was tough, but tolerable. I'd always liked physical exercise, and I was in pretty good shape to start with. It was a lot rougher on my mind. The best friend I made in basic was a guy named Steve McConnell from California. Steve was a good Joe, the kind of guy really good to have with you in a rugged situation, like basic. He had a knack for pointing out the situation. He had a knack for pointing out the idiocies of military life, and a huge capacity for enjoying them. Kind of a dry sense of humor. He didn't laugh out loud. In fact, he hardly ever laughed out aloud. But he was perpetually amused by things that drove me crazy. Like me, he'd sort of drifted into the Army. Oh, no, he sort of drifted into the Army. But the more he thought about the idea, the less he liked it. Neither did I, but I didn't see anything I could do about it. We spent hours peeling potatoes together, discussing war and women and the Army and women and the communist menace in Southeast Asia and women and our DI Steve was an independent thinker. He didn't hang out with the other blacks in our outfit who had clicked up in self-protection. That could be tough for a black man in the U.S. Army. But Steve cut his own path and chose his brothers by other criteria than the shade they were painted. I didn't know what he and I were. I didn't know why he and I were so tight. I don't know what his criteria were. But somehow we were so close. I got the idea. I really knew him. Understood where he was at. I was as surprised as anyone when he finally made his stand. There comes a day, see, when they line you up on a god-awful cold February morning and truck up a couple of coffin-sized cartons. The DIs are clearly more pretentious than usual, projecting the air that something sacred is about to happen. By Army standards, they're right. What happens is, you get to the head of the line and throw out your hands, and one huge mother of a sergeant flings a rifle at you as hard as he can. You've been issued your rifle, and mister, God have mercy on you if you drop it, or fumble your catch and let part of it touch the ground. Worse than calling it a gun. A few guys do catch copper-plated hell for having fingers too frozen to clutch. And you spend your time online furiously flexing your fingers and praying to God you won't blow it. Steve was right in front of me in line and curiously withdrawn. I couldn't get a rise out of him with even the sourest joke. I chalked it up to the cold and the solemnity of the occasion, and I guess I was part right. All at once, it was his turn, and the biggest sergeant selected a rifle and pressed it to his chest and straight-armed it with a bit extra oomph because he was from Alabama, and I prayed Steve would field it okay, and he just simply sidestepped. It was just like that. One rushing second, and then time stopped. Steve pulled to his left, and the rifle cartwheeled past him and struck earth, barrel first. Sank a mother-loving 3 inches into the mud, the stock brushing my knee. All around the parade ground, people stopped cursing and joking and stared at the damn M1 quivering in the mud like a branch planted by an idiot. Stared and waited for the sky to fall. The big sergeant got redder than February wind could account for and swelled up like a toad, groping for an obscenity that could contain his fury. As he found it, Steve spoke up in the mildest voice I'd ever heard. "I'm sorry, Sergeant," he said, "but I can't take that rifle." I thought the sergeant might actually have apoplexy. "That is the weapon I have issued you, boy. You will take it. Get it out of the mud now." Steve shook his head calmly. "Can't do it. That thing kills people, Sergeant, and I do not accept delivery." The sergeant suddenly became just as calm as Steve. Scary transition to witness. He pulled his sidearm and aimed it directly at Steve's navel. This thing kills too, Private. Pick up that rifle. I looked at Steve, paralyzed by his crazy stunt. He was plainly scared to death, and I was as sure as he that he was about to die. Pick it up, Steve, I prayed. You don't have to use it now. Just pick the goddamn thing up. Sergeant, he said firmly, you can make me pick it up, but you can't ever make me use it. Not even with that automatic. So what's the point? The sergeant glared at him a long moment, then holstered his .45 and waved over a couple of corporals. Take this goddamn nigger to the guardhouse, he snarled, and bent over the carton again. Before I had time to think, he heaved a rifle at me, and I made a perfect catch. Next, he bellowed, and the line moved forward. I found myself in barracks, looking at my new rifle, and wondering why Steve had done such a crazy thing. I went off to Nam soon after that. I tried to get word to Steve in the stockade, but it couldn't be done. He got left behind with the rest of America, and I found myself in a jungle full of unfriendly strangers. It was bad, real bad. And I began to think a lot about Steve and the choice he had made. I couldn't tell the people I was fighting from the people I was fighting for. And the official policy of kill what moves didn't satisfy me. At first. Then one day, a 12-year-old boy as cute as Dondi took off my left earlobe with a machete while I got some K rations out of my pack for him. The kid would have taken off my head instead of my ear, but a pretty tight buddy of mine, Sean Riley, shot him in the belly while he was winding up. Christ, Tommy, Sean said when he made sure the kid was dead. You know the word. Never turn your back on a gook. I was too busy with my bleeding ear to reply, but I was coming to agree with him. Just as Nam had been easier than jail, catching the rifle easier than refusing it. Killing gooks was easier than discussing political philosophy with him. A week later, it got to be more easy. Sean's squad had been sent upriver to reconnoiter, while the rest of us sat on our breath back for the big push. That didn't make sense to me. I was on sentry duty with a fellow whose name I misremember. Not a bad guy, but he smoked marijuana. Judgy fucks. What's wrong with that? And I'd been raised to think that stuff was evil. Oh, see, that's the problem. Anyway, this particular day, he smoked a couple of joints while we sat there listening to jungle sounds and waited for relief so we could eat. It made him thirsty, so I offered to spell him while he went to the river for a drink. He slipped into the jungle, walking a little unsteadily. A minute later, I heard him scream. It was only 50 yards or so to the river, but I came circumspectly, expecting to find him dead and the enemy in strength. But when I poked my rifle through the foliage, there were nobody in sight but him. He was on his knees with his face buried in his hands. Oh, Jesus, I thought. What a time to freak out. I started to swear at him, and then I saw what he had seen. It was Sean, floating lazily against the bank, and his fingers and toes dangling from a sort of necklace around his throat, and his genitals sewed into his mouth. A friend. A man who had saved my life. A guy who wanted to be an artist when he got home. Carved up like a Christmas turkey by a bunch of slant-eyed monkeys. It becomes much more than easy to kill gooks. It became fun. And that's where we're going to leave it. That is the end of tonight's reading. Boy, that took a turn, didn't it? Holy shit. Yep, that one definitely took a turn took a left at Albuquerque. Let me that off for mark where I stopped there. Okay. Yeah, that took a turn. Yeah, it did take a dark turn there, didn't it, dude? That's all right. Not every chapter of Callahan's Crosstime Saloon can be happy, joy, joy, motherfuckers. Bad Witch, how are you? I'm so glad you were able to stop in and give a listen. How are you? What time is it where you are? It's just into your evening. Nice. How was your hump day? Okay, yeah. All right. Sorry. I fucking blipped out there. Disassociated. Jesus, I didn't realize how much I disassociate. You don't really notice it, I guess, when you're sitting by yourself all the time. But I do, I have taken notice as to how much I disassociate. And I do it quite a bit. Like that meme I shared with you, dude, about the being pissed because you have to stop and repeat things because you were talking to yourself and you got distracted and lost track. Yep. I will disassociate and I will out of sight, out of mind, forget about shit. Like I have to remind myself that I'm cooking something if something's in the toaster oven. If I'm not in the kitchen actually watching it, so I gotta bring up like the timer or something on my phone so I remember that I'm actually doing that because I'll come into the living, put it in the thing, set the timer, come into the living room, get on my phone to set the timer so that I'm reminded that I'm cooking, and I'll see a notification and I'll go check the notification. Next thing you know, it's 10 minutes have gone by and I'm like, fuck, I'm cooking something. I forgot all about that. Yeah. Totally do it all the time. Crazy, crazy stuff. All right, guys, I am jumping off here because it is 11, a little after 11, and I'm going to, I might finish this off. I might do the final video for this because I just looked and chapter 7 is only 1 page long. No, chapter 7 is 1, 2, 3 pages long. So I was thinking chapter 7 would be, 10 pages like the other ones. So I'll be able to finish that tonight. I'll put it all in part 3. Ooh, good gravy. And then that book will be done. And then I can start on a new one. But, all right, guys. Thanks for coming in and listening to me. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're new here and you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go subscribe to it. I would greatly appreciate it. And you guys have made my 59th birthday very much fun. I'm glad you guys came in to listen to me read for it. And I'm going to go out and smoke more of my birthday weed and get even more baked than what I am already. All right, guys. Peace out with sauerkraut. I love you all. And we'll see you next Wednesday.